Well, hello. Thanks for making it back. We are going to do chapter 26 today. And I know some of you are thinking, but wait, we're on 25. Well, this is a good time to explain how the Bible was put together. They broke it up into chapters and verses to make it a little easier for us to say, hey, read Leviticus 3:16 that says all fat belongs to the Lord. But the events of chapter 25 happen after the events of chapter 26. So we're going to do them backwards, and it will actually put them in order. They'll make more sense because the flow will, like, well, wait a minute, why is this happening and that happen? And we'll make it make sense, I promise. So the next video will be chapter 25. You'll get to see what I mean after that. And then if you're still confused, give me a shout. So, chapter 26 of Genesis, hit that like and share button and let the world know what you're working on here. This is a great project. So, chapter 26. A severe famine now struck the land and has happened before in Abraham's time. So, Isaac moved to Gerar, where Abimelech, king of the Philistines, lived. So, this is where translations come into play too. So, I wanted to read that first part so I could kind of point out some of the things that are different. This says, a severe famine now struck in the land as it happened before in Abraham's time. Now listen to the complete Jewish version. A famine came over the land, not the same as the first famine which had taken place when Abraham was alive. Yitzhak went down to Gerar to Abimelech, king of the Philistines. Adonai appeared to him and said, don't go down to Egypt, but live where I tell you. Stay in this land, and I will be with you and bless you, because I will give you these lands. I will give these lands to you and your descendants. I will fulfill the oath which I swore to Abraham, your father. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. I will give all these lands to your descendants, and by your descendants, all the nations of the earth will bless themselves. This is where the translation thing comes from. Verse 4 in the New Living Translation says this: I will cause your descendants to become as numerous as the stars in the sky. I will give them all these lands, and through your descendants, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. See, the wording there, it doesn't really capture the sense of it, because in the complete Jewish Bible, it says, by your descendants, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. So it's not, we don't get to just bless ourselves through Israel. Israel blesses us by us blessing them. It matters. I know that doesn't sound like a very big deal, but as we get further into this, I promise it'll become a much bigger deal. So let's jump back into verse 5. All of this is because Abraham heeded what I said and did what I told him to do. He followed my mitzvah, my rules, my commandments, and my teachings. So Yitzhak settled in Gerar. The men of the place asked him about his wife, and out of fear, he said, she is my sister. He thought, if I tell them she's my wife, they might kill me in order to take Rivkah. After all, she is a beautiful woman. But one day, after he had lived there a long time, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, happened to be looking out of a window when he spotted Yitzhak caressing Rivkah, his wife. Abimelech summoned Yitzhak and said, so she is your wife after all. How come you said she is my sister? Yitzhak responded, because I thought I would get killed because of her. Abimelech said, what is this you have done to us? One of the people could easily have slept with your wife, and you would have brought guilt on us. See, guilt was a huge thing back then. Not necessarily adultery and God in a lot of ways, but the guilt that could be put on taking another man's wife, even accidentally. Uh, so Abimelech warned all these people, whoever touches this man or his wife will certainly be put to death. Yitzhak planted crops in that land and reaped that year 100 times as much as he had sowed. Adonai had blessed him. The man became rich and prospered more and more until he had become very wealthy indeed. He had flocks, cattle, and a large household, and the Philistines envied him. Now the Philistine had stopped up and filled with dirt all the wells his father's servants had dug during the lifetime of Abraham his father. Abimelech said to Yitzhak, you must go away from us, because you have become much more powerful than we are. So Yitzhak left, set up camp in Wadi Gerar, which a wadi is like a dried up riverbed. And that'll matter here in a minute. and lived there. Yitzhak reopened the wells which had been dug during the lifetime of Abraham his father, and the ones the Philistines had stopped up after Abraham died, and called them by the names his father had used for them. So Yitzhak's servants dug in the Wadi, which is the riverbed, and uncovered a spring of running water. Now, if we look at verse 19, uh, it says something almost completely different in the New Living Translation. It says, Isaac's servants also dug in the Gerar Valley and discovered a well of fresh water. There's no such thing as a well of fresh water at this particular time. It all flowed. They didn't call it that, basically. That it was not flowing water. This was a dried up riverbed that they dug out to make water flow again. So is that a big deal? Maybe not, but as we get moving forward, translations will matter more and more, because sometimes it can just adjust it a little bit, and the next thing you know, you're way off. So they dug another well. Uncovered it, but the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with the herdsmen, claiming that water is ours. So he called the well Esek, quarrel, because they quarreled with him. They dug another well and quarreled over that one too. So he called it Sitnah, enmity. He went away from there and dug another well, and over that one they didn't quarrel. So he called it Rekhovat, wide open spaces, and said, because now Adonai has made room for us, and we will be productive in the land. From there, Yitzhak went to Beersheba. Adonai appeared to him that same night and said, I am the God of Abraham, your father. Don't be afraid, because I am with you. I will bless you and increase your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham. There he built an altar and called on the name of Adonai. He pitched his tent there, and there Yitzhak's servants dug a well. Then Abimelech went to him from Gerar with his friend Achuzat and Pichol, the commander of his army. Now, when the leader or a king walks up with their head military guy, you're probably not assuming they're coming over to play cards or just hang out. So Yitzhak said to them, why have you come to me, even though you were unfriendly to me and sent me away? They answered, we saw very clearly that Adonai has been with you. So we said, let there be an oath between us. Let's make a pact between ourselves and you that you will not harm us, just as we have not caused you offense, but we have done you nothing but good, and sent you on your way in peace. Now you are blessed by Adonai. They didn't quite do it that way, but they're maybe sugarcoating their version of it. But Yitzhak prepared a banquet for them, and they ate and drank. The next morning they got up early and swore to each other. Then Yitzhak sent them on their way, and they left him peacefully. That very day Yitzhak's servants came and told him about the well they had dug. We have found water. So he called it Shiv'ah, oath, 7. And for this reason, the name of the city is Beersheba, well of 7, well of the earth, well of an oath, to this day. And I've been to Beersheba. When Esau was 40 years old, he took as wives Judith and the daughter of Beri the Hittite, and Basmath the daughter of Elon the Hittite. But they became a cause for embitterment of the spirit of Yitzhak and Rivkah. So at the age of 40, he married 2 Hittite wives, basically. That's what that's saying. And they didn't like that too much. So like I said, 26 comes before 25. So the twins, Esau and Jacob, had not been born in 25. And we know that because the king would have never asked about her if she had kids hanging around. So the kids are already born, and when this chapter was written, it's not a big deal. It doesn't change who Jesus is or anything like that. It's just a little, 66 books of the Bible, we got a couple of chapters wrong. That's all it is. Doesn't really matter that much. But Isaac's route to Egypt took him into the territory of the Philistines. He went to Gerar because it is where the king resided. So he had warehouses with food storage. If you want to go, if there's a national emergency, you don't want to go to, the middle of nowhere. There's not going to be any services there. You're going to go to where the services are. That's what he's doing in a famine. So Yahweh, which remember is God's actual name, we'll get later on, appeared to Isaac and told him not to go down to Egypt. In other words, despite what his eyes told him, God told him to stay. Nothing told him to stay except God. So God would take him through the trouble, not out of it. And Pastor John a while back said, sometimes in our prayers, we focus on getting out of trouble. And a lot of times, most of the time I've found anyway, God wants to get you through it. not out of it. There's a lesson in there. So that's just the way God works. God renewed the covenant promises he had made to Isaac. Isaac would look at his circumstances and question whether he understood what God had told him, because really there was no evidence of what God told him was going to come to pass. It wasn't going. There was nothing he could go, well, that shows me something's about to happen. Also, don't miss the end of verse 4. I know I pointed this out when I was reading it, but it says, so that all the nations of the earth shall bless themselves by your heirs, in the New Living Translation. But the idea is basically that the humanity is connected to Israel. Now, if the God of the universe created the world and all the people in it and all the lands in it and everything in it, and then took one piece of it and set it aside specially for himself, shouldn't we value that piece too? I mean, if it's important to God, it should be important to us. So what he's saying is that mankind's fate is tied to Israel's fate. They had to act to be blessed. So in order to be a blessing, you got to do something. You can't just sit there and be a blessing. Now, granted, sometimes when we keep our mouth shut, that can be considered a blessing by somebody. But in God's economy, you got to do some stuff. So Isaac admits his lie, and obviously he learned this lesson from his father because it worked last time, and he walked away very wealthy. So when Abraham encountered the famine, he decided to go to Egypt, and he went. When Isaac did it, he decided to go to Egypt, but he didn't go. He listened to God. He obeyed him. So when this king of the Philistines makes reference to Isaac's God too, he calls him by name. He knew who he was. He may not have known him. They may not have had a relationship. More than likely they didn't. I can't imagine why they would. But he knew who he was, and that's important. Because when we just say Lord, we all just assume we can throw Jesus in there, and that's who he's talking about. But that's not who God's talking about here in Genesis. So God blessed Isaac for trusting him to stay in Canaan, and his crop yield was like 100 times what it would have been normally what he sowed. So we have the weaker king asking a stronger Isaac to leave. So Isaac could have just said, nah, I'm going to just stay here, and then we're going to start a war. But he didn't do that. Plus, Abimelech knew that it was wise to mend fences. He may not have believed in God, but he saw what God was doing. And he may not have followed God or obeyed God, but he feared God, which is such a great place to be. If you're not going to follow and obey God, at least fear him. Don't make your life harder than it has to be. So Beersheba means well of the seven. I think I said that, but it was a place Abraham moved Isaac after he had his near-death experience on the altar when he was about to sacrifice him. So this is where he moved. Isaac went back to that same place. So Isaac builds an altar, sacrifices to Yahweh, and has his men start digging a new well. Now Isaac is annoyed. Remember, all the people in the Bible, except for Jesus, are just people. They get mad, selfish, happy, sad, glad, jealous, all of those things. And that's what Isaac was. He was annoyed. And his statement to Abimelech is basically like, what now? I've done everything you told me to do, and then here you come again. And peace and prosperity and room to grow, though, are now Isaac's. So his life is absolutely perfect, and it's going to go smooth sailing from here. Oh, but wait. His son Esau took 2 Hittite women as wives. That's probably going to lead to some stuff. It's going to lead us into chapter 25. So we'll cover that next time. God bless. Love God, love people, change the world, or something close to it.